Well, my connection with Thomas More actually predates 1968 because in 1965 I entered the college and I'm a veteran of the downtown trudge through Covington because the college at that time was a very widespread campus and it consisted mainly of houses that had been adapted for use as classrooms. And so moving from one class to another often meant a 2 or 3 block sprint. And then Columbus Hall, which is still on Madison Avenue, was the student center, and that housed the library, the student government offices, the cafeteria, and so everyone passed through Columbus Hall at least once and possibly more times a day. But the classrooms themselves were located in firehouses and grade schools and funeral homes, and it was quite an eclectic campus, to say the least. The campus was the hub of the college for many, many years downtown, although you will remember that originally the campus for the college was located at Villa Madonna Academy out on Amsterdam Road in Villa Hills. So the college has a history of moving. It's a rather peripatetic college, we could say. And in 1965, we began to hear rumors that there was a plan to relocate the campus. So by the time we moved here in January of 1968 to Crestview Hills, I was a junior in the college. I was an English major, and I was thrilled to be at the new campus, although at the time that we relocated here on Turkey Foot Road, there was nothing else developed around us. And so if you can imagine a prairie somewhere in Kansas with a set of buildings in the middle of it, that's what the original campus looked like when we actually came.
My connection with Thomas More was that I was I am the youngest of 4 brothers. Each of them attended Villa Madonna College, but I was fortunate to have the opportunity to attend both Villa Madonna and Thomas More College. I was a physics major, and as such, my Villa Madonna campus ranged from the Mother of God Elementary School on 6th Street all the way up to 11th and 12th Street, where the main campus was.
I'm Sister Margaret Mary Goff, and I am a Benedictine sister of St. Walburg Monastery, and I was the registrar at Thomas More College from 1967 till 1974, I believe. I am an alum of Thomas More College, Villa Madonna College, and I'm a supporter of it.
I was a trustee, a member of the Board of Trustees, which was a 12 or 14 member board of community leaders that served in that capacity.
I was elected president of the Student Council, which is what we called the student government at that time. I was the first woman to be elected to that position since the 1940s, and so it caused quite a bit of interest among the faculty and the administration. But it gave me a wonderful opportunity because in that position I was able to work closely with Monsignor Murphy, who was the president of the college at that time. He was such a magnificent leader, and I was able to learn leadership skills from him up close and personal because at that time, as president of the student government, I was able to sit on the administration committee of the Board of Overseers. That's how I was asked to join in the spring of 1968 the steering committee for the dedication. So I was actually involved in the planning for the dedication, which was to be held in September of 1968. The steering committee for the event, I believe, was comprised of about 12 of us. Most were staff members in the areas of development and student activities and the other cabinet members, so to speak, of the college. The honorary chairperson for the dedication steering committee was Judge Adams, who was a very prominent judge here in Northern Kentucky at the time. I served on that committee in my role as student government president, and we met in the private dining room, the chancellor's dining room, on many, many late afternoon and evenings from about the spring, April, March, until the actual event was finally planned in September. Now, of course, the planning process was very long and we were very specific. I was specifically put in charge of the pig roast barbecue, which would be held on the opening day of the dedication. It was primarily aimed at students, and we also invited the neighboring communities around the campus. And so it was billed as a family day on the college campus, and I enjoyed that role very much.
I was not involved in the planning for the dedication because we had just moved the college out here in January of '68. We had enough to do to get organized for that semester, which started in late January, mid-January. And then during the time that we were planning for the event of the dedication, our office would have been getting ready to do registration for the coming semester.
I can't remember that I was on any committee. I know the board was asked about who should come, and everybody was in agreement. If the president would come, that would be a fine thing. For a small college, for the president of the United States to come to dedicate the college was a big boost.
The story of how Thomas More College was actually visited by the President of the United States is truly amazing. It's probably an indication of the power of prayer. I remember so vividly that at one of our meetings, Monsignor Murphy walked into the Chancellor's dining room and said, "There is a secret I'm going to share with all of you, but you are not able to tell anyone, not even your family. We have proffered an invitation to the President of the United States to attend." There was stunned silence in the room. We all were just aghast. And I know some of us were offering alternative suggestions. We were saying things like, it might be easier to get Bob Hope, or it might be easier to get Eric Severide or Walter Cronkite. But Monsignor Murphy had connections in Washington through the National Catholic Education Association. And he had used these connections to get into the inner circle of the White House and to offer this invitation. But the initial response from the president had been that he couldn't plan that far ahead, not knowing what would be required of him in September. And so he really postponed the decision. But at that particular time, Father Murphy felt that maybe there was a chance, so he brought us all in on the secret. That required us to have a plan A and a plan B, because we weren't going to know until the actual day of the dedication whether the president would be able to attend. And so we constructed a very elaborate scenario for both possibilities, and then just had to keep quiet about it, which was extremely difficult, as you can imagine. I couldn't tell my parents what was going on. I couldn't even tell the other members of the student council what was going on. And so all of us who were in on the secret found ourselves having private little conversations because we were just bursting to talk to somebody about this possibility, and that was the only way we could.
I was on student council my freshman, sophomore, and junior years, and as such, when it was determined that the president was going to be coming to the campus, I was contacted by the Secret Service to assist in security. Myself and several of the Secret Service people were stationed in the mezzanine overlooking Siler's Commons, where the dedication ceremony was to occur. I looked out on the crowd to see if anybody was out of the ordinary, looked strange, anything that they would need to take any action. Fortunately, everything went smooth and the dedication went off without a hitch.
It was secret. So I can't remember when I first heard about it. We knew he was invited. And really, it was not positive until the morning of the dedication. And it was very secretive because of the security problems. So it wasn't announced ahead of time. And there are those of us who knew what was going on, like the security people came and looked all over the college a few days before. and even did some wiring. And like when he came into the auditorium, some FBI people came in with a telephone and put it right near him and plugged it in. That's how, you know, he stayed in constant communication.
He mentioned that would I be offended if I were to cut down my speech? And I said, wouldn't be offended, it'd be an honor to be there. If you want 2 minutes, I can give you 2 minutes. No, but you will have to cut it down, because if he comes, meanwhile, plan your whole speech in case he doesn't come. And that's when he spelled out that there were hazards. It's hard, I think, to communicate to people today who weren't grown up in '68 how scared people were of campus radicals. And they probably had a good reason to. I know I was in campus life and we were careful too. So he said, the odds are good. The president would really like to come. Hubert Humphrey is running for president, and the president likes to signal his interest, but he can't do it just anywhere. He has to pick a place that would be different, and also short notice. So you would have to come, and it would be secret. Only the committee will know about it. Well, now I have kind of a sense of daring do and all that, and I thought, my goodness, how dare I miss that? And I said, yes, of course. To me, it was exciting on any terms. And then what I come to call my accordion speech, it had to be short or long. You couldn't stretch it or push together. Since I don't read the manuscript, I did a detailed outline and I was ready to go.
It was a very exciting time, and I think we didn't appreciate all the complications that were involved in getting the president here and people keeping it quiet, those who knew it. And what I was surprised about was Father Murphy's fear that something would happen while the president was here, because it was during the student uprisings regarding Vietnam War, and we didn't have a lot of that on campus, at least that I'm not aware. I wasn't major, and we didn't think of any harm coming to him here. But Jack Murphy was afraid that something might happen. And he was relieved, I think, to see him get back on the plane, even though he was delighted to have him here.
Everybody was pretty up for the dedication, but when they announced that the president was going, I don't know that there was a formal announcement. It was just a buzz around the place. You know, he's coming, he's here, it is the president, you know. It was just sort of spectacular. And certainly the general public did not know anything about it. It was a big surprise for them, and a surprise for most people. They picked him up in a funeral limousine. George Mullenkamp was on the board. I think they went right out onto the airport, and he got out of the plane. He got right out onto the blacktop, and he got right in the limousine.
My role during the actual dedication was to be on the speaker's platform the day of the academic convocation. Now, earlier in the week, it was Tuesday or Wednesday earlier that week, the Secret Service did arrive on campus because they needed to install the dedicated phone line that would be connected to the famous red phone if the president ever actually came. So we became hopeful that this was actually going to take place when we saw them arrive on campus to do this. But we were actually at the luncheon the day of the dedication, which was a Saturday, the last Saturday in September. And Father Murphy and I were seated next to one another during the luncheon, and suddenly we each felt a tap on our shoulders as the Secret Service came up and tapped us and said, "Come back to campus now." And that was our first indication that the president was really coming. And this was, shortly after 12 o'clock noon, and the convocation was slated to begin at 2:30. So we were really down to the last minute at that point. He and I both made some excuses because we still did not want to make an announcement. And we got in his car to come back to the campus where there was a flurry of activity. a leaflet had been printed announcing the visitation of the president, but until he was actually in the air on Air Force One, we were told not to insert those into the pre-printed program. So everyone was standing at the ready, but really couldn't do anything until we got that word. When we got back to the campus, Rufus Youngblood of the Secret Service was already in the circle with his notebook, and he was recording the names of everyone to make sure that all of us had a connection with the college and could be identified. I ran into the Seiler Commons where the event was taking place to ask the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra Brass Ensemble if they knew how to play Hail to the Chief. And the conductor turned to me and said, "Can you hum a few bars and maybe I can figure it out?" Of course he was joking, but it made for a lightening of the moment. At that point, I went back in and robed because all of us were getting ready for the academic procession in, and it was quite an event. There were more than 1,000 people in Seiler Commons, and we had representatives from other colleges and universities who had accepted the invitation to come. So they joined the procession in full academic regalia. It was really a splendid sight. We processed in up to the platform. Bishop Ackerman spoke a welcome, Father Garvey gave an invocation, and then I, as representative of the students, gave a short welcome, followed by representatives from alumni and from the faculty. At that point, there were honorary degrees that were awarded, and those honorary degrees were awarded to Rabbi Nelson Gluck, who at that time was the president of Hebrew Union College, Dr. Martin Marty, who was to be the main speaker if the president did not arrive, and to Mr. Zimmer, who was the head of the Cincinnati Gas and Electric Company and who had been quite a champion of education in Northern Kentucky. So I was really part of that platform party until the president's motorcade rolled into the campus, and at that point I looked out the side door of the Seiler Commons and saw a Secret Service agent motioning to me. So I went off the side entrance, doffed my cap and gown, ran out to the circle, greeted the president, and then went back in to join the platform until the president actually came into the room. So I was in the middle of that entire ceremony.
I remember the place was full. It couldn't have been more full. It was too full, but it was exciting because there was something in the air, and nobody knew about it, but just a couple of people. Father Murphy said that only Dick Gibeau and Bob Carnell were aware of the possibility of this happening, and so it was kept tight. Very tight. However, when I did find out about it, I made my way up to the top, the roof of the library, and I thought I'll get a better view of things up there. When I got up there, there was a gentleman up there, and I said, "How did you get up here?" And he said, "No, the question is, how did you get up here? This is restricted." I said, "It was the Secret Service, and he was telling me to get off the roof," and I did. I didn't get my view. So I went down with the throngs and just got jostled around. So. But it was a very exciting time. And I think some of the stories that were told about LBJ, when he walked into the convocation, it was just like everything burst loose. And Martin Marty was giving the talk, and he condensed his talk and stopped. And he was very cordial about being replaced by the president, so lovely man.
Very few in the crowd knew what's happening. But all of a sudden, it's stirring around and microphones are being set up on the table. And mere professors like I don't need microphones more than one. So what's happening? And I thought, how am I going to bridge into this? I had to signal to them that I wasn't taking myself that seriously.
I guess the favorite story that I remember was how they maneuvered around to take the speaker who actually was introduced as the speaker, and then it became evident that he was going to be there in a few minutes, and how he maneuvered himself down to make room for the president was just an interesting situation, you know. He very gracious, very gracious. It was, the whole place was in a state of pandemonium, you know, that the president was coming, and it just was. And the music and everything, Hail to the Chief, you know, the little string quartet or whatever it was that's what they played, and it was, Lyndon Johnson was a great big man, you know, a great big man.
Father Murphy had to be in the convocation, so he sent, when they found out the president was coming, he sent Father George Schneider and Father Ed Bauman out to meet the president. And the story that George tells on himself is when they got in the limousine, and the limousines, by the way, were provided by Molenkamp Funeral Home. Bill Molenkamp was a trustee, and he provided the limousines. But the president was sitting across from George Schneider, who was admiring the president's outfit and his alligator shoes. George Schneider was sitting across from the president, and the president said to Father Schneider, "Could I ask you a favor, Father?" And George said, "Sure, Mr. President, what can I do for you?" And he said, "Would you take your feet off my shoes?" George was a very big man, and so was LBJ.
When the president actually arrived at the college, there was a feeling of almost electricity in the crowd, because by then the inserts had been stuffed into the programs, and so all of the attendees knew that the President of the United States was actually going to be there. And I'm not sure they listened to anybody speaking because they were waiting for the president to appear. And when he did appear, there was thunderous applause in Seiler Commons. It was just a roar of applause and cheers. And a really wonderful moment as Monsignor Murphy escorted the president down the center aisle, and the president just stopped to greet every individual he possibly could. It took him a long time to reach the podium, for sure. When he did, he was introduced, and again, the crowd was on their feet. There were just constant standing ovations that went on throughout his brief time at the college. My favorite story from that day is probably the time that I had to spend with the president, chatting with him and greeting him in the circle. I mentioned that we had flowers from the Swan florist. Well, as it happened, just as the motorcade was winding into the drive, Rufus Youngblood turned to me and said, "Oh, by the way, Mrs. Johnson didn't make it." So there I am with a dozen long stem red roses, wondering, what will I do with these flowers when the president arrives? As he got out of the limousine, the only thing I could think of to do was to say, "Mr. President, we're so sorry Mrs. Johnson couldn't come. Would you please take these home to her?" And he accepted them very graciously, put them in the back seat of the limousine, and then spent some time chatting with me before we actually went into the administration building. Later, of course, I was to go back to Air Force One with Monsignor Murphy, but I was separated from them by the press of the crowd, so I didn't make it to the circle in time, and the Secret Service was adamant about getting in that car and leaving. So my favorite story is that Monsignor Murphy came back from Air Force One, and he said, "Well, you certainly made an impression on the president," and he started emptying his pockets, and he had pens and note cards and matchbooks and an autograph, all from Air Force One, that the president had wanted him to bring back to me. My other favorite memory from that day is the fact that my mother was on the campus as a member of the Women's Guild, and she was volunteering to arrange the food that was going to be served at the reception that immediately followed the academic convocation. So she was back in the kitchen the entire time the president was on the podium, and never really got a chance to see him or to see me interacting with the president. And it wasn't until years later, when President Johnson passed away and the local news stations were rerunning the footage from that day, that she called me at my home in Florida, where I lived by that time, to tell me that when the president stopped speaking, I was the first person to leap to my feet and give him the standing ovation. And so that was when she finally got to see me with the president on the podium. I was seated directly behind Bishop Ackerman, so it was only when I stood up that I was visible, because he was wearing his beretta, and that was pretty much covering me up most of the time.
Well, the name change from Villa Madonna to Thomas More, that had been back in 1929. When the college moved from our monastery grounds down to 12th Street, it was decided that the other communities of the Sisters of Divine Providence and the Sisters of Notre Dame and the Benedictine sisters who started the college would jointly run the college. And so it should have a new name. So Bishop Howard in 1929 said, we'll call it St. Mary's College. Well, someone said, well, what about the charter? The charter is in Villa Madonna College. And they said, well, Father Streck should look into that. And Father Streck was one of the men working on the campus, and he was asked to look into having the charter changed to make it read St. Mary's College. Nothing ever happened. Nobody knows why it wasn't done, but nobody made a move to do it. So it stayed Villa Madonna College until we came out here. So when we came out here, I wasn't real excited about it being changed to Thomas More, because, you know, I have some pride in our Villa Madonna name. But at the same time, it had complications, having an institution here named Villa Madonna and having our academy on the monastery grounds called Villa Madonna. And I think I was convinced the day that a van full of mattresses for the men's dorm arrived on the loading dock at Villa Madonna Academy.
Thomas More, you know, that I don't know if you have seen the play, you know, The Man for All Seasons. And I can remember more about Thomas More and his life, what he stood for, than I can Lyndon Johnson, you know, for example. I think that one of the big questions that came up, the reason it got its name Villa Madonna was because it was originally started by the Benedictine sisters who ran Villa Madonna Academy, and certainly prominent in the educational work in the diocese. I think they had the most schools in the diocese. I'm not positive about that, but they had many schools, the Benedictines did. And it was always known as a girls' school, and it was exclusively a girls' schools. So there was a bit of a conflict in the name, Villa Madonna, the House of Our Lady. And there was just a general feeling that it would be better off named of a general person instead of Villa Madonna. And I think the Benedictines were glad to have their name back, you know, because it was as confusing for the academy as it was for the college.
The name change was also part of the new campus concept, and I thoroughly enjoyed the new name. I think that after reading about the life of Thomas More, he was somebody that embodied the goals of the Catholic tradition of education, and that Villa Madonna College was known for.
When I first heard about the name change from Villa Madonna College to Thomas More College, I became very excited for several reasons. Villa Madonna College, because it started on the campus of Villa Madonna Academy, was frequently confused with the Academy. And although Villa Madonna College was the college that I enrolled in, I felt that the name change to Thomas More and the new beginning on the new campus was extremely appropriate because Thomas More is so relatable. And of course, the movie A Man for All Seasons had been very highly acclaimed just before that period of time. So Thomas More became a very relatable figure, a very appropriate figure for people who are in the world and trying to live according to their conscience and to be symbols of integrity. And so I thought it was a fitting transition. I also thought it was appropriate because when you study Thomas More, you see that he was not only a champion of education, but more particularly the education of women. And I thought that was an important symbol because the college began as a college for women religious, and then for women, because it didn't become a coeducational institution until towards the end of World War II. So Thomas More, as a family man, as a man who was involved in public life, as a man who faced all of the temptations and all of the opportunities and challenges that most of us will face, to me was a very appropriate choice for the new name for the college.
Well, you can't miss, if you're a humanist and you're in the humanities, if you like history, drama, everything else, on any list of the people that you like to think about, he'd have to be there. Erasmus, of course, would have been very good. That would all work well too. But there's not as much drama in their lives as there was in the case of Thomas More, who was martyred in the end. And I just thought it's a wonderful chance to let people know that the world of that century and the world of ours had some things in common, some things that he had to worry about. In fact, it did him in, and what we were worrying about. But most of all, his devotion to learning.
I have found that my education at Thomas More gave me a substantial foundation for my further education that I went on to at the University of Kentucky in engineering. And I can only look back at that time I spent at Thomas More as well spent, and very glad to have been part of the campus.
I'd like to see the college grow. I hope that it would continue to grow and always maintain the high academic standards it's known for. I don't want it to get too big though. You know, I don't want it to be it's big already, I think, you know, from what we were, but I wish it well, and I think it will. It's a place to be proud of. I'm very proud of Thomas More, and the little part that I had in it is nothing compared to all of the wonderful, wonderful faculty we have had on the staff, and the administration, the staff, the lay people. Even some of my greatest efforts were accomplished because of my good secretarial staff in the registrar's office. I couldn't have done it without them because they were just so wonderful.
My hopes for the college for the next 50 years is that the emphasis needs to be on the curriculum at the college to have a superb and quality faculty. And it's more so than the size. That will take care of itself if it becomes an institution with a reputation of great learning. And that's the way it was to a degree when I went there, because almost every faculty member had a doctorate degree.
I'm very, very pleased to say that I have had an almost continuous relationship with this college since 1965 when I entered as a freshman. This has been a unique opportunity for me through all of the years to pay back, to thank the college for all that the college did for me. What I would hope to see in the next 50 years of the college is that I'm here to see most of the next 50 years, first of all, but additionally, I see a college that is not just surviving, I see a college that is thriving. And that's very unique in an era when so many private colleges are not able to keep their doors open. And when I look at the reasons for that, I have to believe that it is because Catholic identity, the values that are taught here, and the moral compass that can be developed here through the study of philosophy, theology, ethics, and its application to all areas of one's life creates a balanced and well-rounded individual. And I think that looking at the accomplishments of alumni over the history of the college proves that point. So I would see a continuation of that strong record of accomplishment and success, but I would also see that because of the firm grounding in the Catholic intellectual tradition, we have a very good opportunity to not just continue to thrive, but to actually advance to a more global position, particularly because with the technology that's available today, geography is no more the limitation. We can reach out to students really across the globe if they have an interest in seeing what Thomas More University has to offer. And that's what I will be looking forward to seeing in the years to come.